Well, Myanmar's opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi is expected to begin her first visit to China today at a time of some tension between the two nations. Ms Suu Kyi will meet President Xi Jinping, but few other details have been made available. Christopher Lamb was the Australian ambassador to Myanmar in the late 80s. He's currently the president of the Australian Myanmar Institute. Lovely to have you with us, Christopher. Thank you very much for coming in. How much should we read into this visit by the opposition leader now, of course?
Well, first of all, I should say she's the leader of what is probably the largest political party in the country, although the governing party has a large membership too, but exactly how you allocate these numbers is an open question. I'm not sure that most people would see her as the opposition leader. They might see her as the alternative leader, but the country doesn't function as this one does, with a straightforward government opposition either side of the House
as ours would.
system.
Yes,
it doesn't work like that, and the layout of the Parliament isn't done that way either. So the NLD, her party, doesn't sit in the Parliament as if it were an opposition on the left-hand side of the Speaker with the government on the right-hand side.
So then how well does she represent Myanmar in China?
Well, she's been invited to go as the leader of her political party, and that's what's very interesting. She hasn't been invited to go as if she were opposition leader or an alternative leader, but the leader of the party. And she's being received by the President of China and the Premier in their party positions. The President is the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. The Premier is the second most important man in the Politburo. So she will be received by them in this capacity, and the Chinese won't try to play a game with governmental leadership in the country.
So there will be not much politics, do you think, or do you think this will be an opportunity to perhaps iron out some of the tension that's developed between the two?
I think it's very interesting. The fact that she's been invited by the political party as the head of her party about 5 months out from elections in Myanmar is itself interesting. It would be regarded in most countries as very unusual to invite a leading politician, an alternative leader, to come to the most important country for that one, and China is that for Myanmar. 5 months out for the election would have to raise a lot of eyebrows. So you have to ask yourself what's actually happening.
What's going on? What is the undercurrent? What would your reading of it be?
It's very hard. I don't want to escape from the question, but I think that the reality is that the Chinese have understood that Myanmar is going through a process of political transformation which is going to change the country so much that they need to get a handle on what that change is. And they see her as, I've no doubt, the most popular politician in the country. Her photograph is everywhere. She is on every lamppost, every cafe,
she remains
every
that
coffee
icon,
shop.
yes.
Yes, she is, and she is that, and especially for people who are outside the main political discussions in the tea shops around the country, and that it's Aung San Suu Kyi. So they want to get an understanding of what she really thinks the country should become. What's her vision for the country? This doesn't have to do with whether she would become president. That's a different issue,
no,
and that's a constitutional question, but so it shouldn't be misread.
Do you think they would see her as a conduit, perhaps, to settle some of this pushback that Myanmar has been really giving China, particularly around some of the infrastructure investment, which they had initially welcomed?
Yes, I do. And I think there they take they've read again some of the things that President Thein Sein has said. When he became president in 2011, and most people didn't pay much attention to it at the time, he gave a speech which gave a vision for the country, and part of that vision was that there would be a functioning parliament. Members of parliament would go to their constituencies. They'd listen to the people. What are the things they want to do? Bring that back to us. That's one of the main reasons why there's been government acceptance of the need to do a pushback on things that many in the government had themselves taken part in creating in the first place, because they listened to people. I think the Chinese have understood that in order to listen to what might happen in Myanmar after the elections at the end of this year, they need to know what politicians like Aung San Suu Kyi might want.
Such a good point. And Myanmar, one of the few countries that are pushing back against China because it is a big heavyweight and everyone wants to do business.
It's a heavyweight in a sense because the imposition of Western sanctions on the military in 1989 meant that for many in Myanmar there was nowhere else to go but to China. If you go there, I don't know if you've been there, but if you go there, you'll get off into an airport that was built during sanctions, therefore with Chinese assistance. You'll stay in a hotel that was probably built with Chinese money, and you'll see that everywhere. And there are many in Myanmar who say it's too much.
Yeah, they want their independence a little.
Yeah,
yes.
We don't want to remove it, we want to scale it back. And we want to see that other countries, including Australia, have the opportunity to invest and to take part in helping the country grow.
Just let me get your thoughts on this terrible tragedy playing out with the Rohingya Muslims and refugees. How do they resolve it? Neither leader, neither Thein Sein nor Aung San Suu Kyi are speaking out on this topic, yet it is clearly an issue for them to resolve.
None of the political leaders are speaking out on it, that's right. But what they all understand, and I've had some talks of my own in the country, not in the last weeks, but I've been in touch with people in the last weeks, it's necessary to find out why the people are leaving. Who's luring them out? What promises of employment are there? Are they leaving because they're persecuted refugees? They're coming from both sides of the border, from Bangladesh and from Myanmar, and they are all of essentially the same ethnic stock, even though some have been living 100 miles apart for a very long time. So what is it that's causing them to go? What do, we collectively, including Australia, about the grinding poverty, the despair, the illiteracy, the absence of health care, the absence of any kind of education? What do we do about that to help people get a future in their own land?
And they are not alone in that issue, are they?
No,
really?
they're not.
It's one of the world's tragedies.
But you mentioned the Rohingya as Muslims.
Sorry,
I heard one of them interviewed, and he said in this interview that he wanted to go and work in Malaysia because it's a Muslim country.
So they identify.
They identify that. And so then who's giving what messages out through the traffickers to get them to move? I wouldn't call them smugglers. These are traffickers. These are criminals.
Yeah, to take advantage. Really great to get your thoughts and insights, Christopher Lane. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.